Hey, what's up, guys? Hope everybody's doing well. Um, just gonna quickly do a video on my post-fight thoughts on the fight that just took place between Canelo Alvarez and Avni Yildirim, as well as my early thoughts on the fight that was just announced. Canelo's next fight against Billy Joe Saunders, which is taking place in May. This fight went exactly how everybody was expecting. Canelo Alvarez, he looked like a beast in there as he was supposed to. In the pre-fight video, I said I expect Canelo to stop Yildirim before the 5th round. He stopped him at the end of the 3rd round. I think Yildirim decided not to come out the corner. He was getting, teed off on as expected. He came forwards with a very predictable style and very predictable game plan. He stood right in front of Canelo, which is a recipe for disaster. If you're going to stand in front of Canelo and let him, let his hands go, that's only going to go one way. So his style was tailor-made for Canelo. He's flat-footed. He has no head movement. He just sits there in a high guard, stands right in front of you, tries to apply pressure. But I mean, that, in my opinion, is not the style to beat Canelo. If you're going to come forwards and try and fight Canelo on the inside, there's very few men that I can see getting the better of Canelo on the inside. Canelo, he has a tremendous inside game with, a hell of a punch selection, great hand speed and good power. And like I say, Yildirim, he stood in front of Canelo. Canelo was able to, go through his tremendous punch selection and, tee off on Yildirim. Yildirim couldn't handle the power. He was getting lit up with body shots, uppercuts, left hook. Every punch in the book, Canelo was letting it go and landing it on him, because Yildirim, he keeps his head right on the center line, no head movement, high guard defense. Like I say, Canelo picked him apart. He looked tremendous. He looked as he was supposed to. Yildirim, in my opinion, he didn't really come to win. Now, I knew this was going to happen, but I was at least expecting Yildirim to punch back a bit more. He came in and he hardly threw any shots because he was so intimidated of getting counter-punched, and, he was afraid to miss Canelo because every time he punched, he was so slow. Canelo, would make him miss and counter him, and that put Yildirim further into his shell. And he got teed off on, and he got stopped early in the fight, as expected. Now, we got the fight we were looking for, or the fight I wanted anyway, which is, Canelo Alvarez versus Billy Joe Saunders, which is taking place in May. The fight was announced as expected. It would be announced after Canelo got done with his easy work, got the mandatory out the way. Now he's going for the unification against Billy Joe Saunders. Now, this is the fight that I've been wanting to see for a long time. In my opinion, Billy Joe Saunders has the ability and the skills and the style to beat Canelo Alvarez. And in my opinion, I think Billy Joe Saunders is going to get the job done. But it's not going to be easy. He's got, a lot of obstacles and challenges in front of him in Canelo Alvarez, who's a hell of a fighter. But with Canelo Alvarez being so flat-footed, I think this is a stylistic nightmare for Canelo Alvarez, as Billy Joe Saunders has some of the best legs and footwork in the game. So I think Canelo Alvarez is really going to struggle to cut the ring off on Billy Joe. He's really going to struggle to pin Billy Joe down and trap him on the ropes. I don't see that happening much in this fight at all. I think Billy Joe Saunders' footwork, his speed, his lateral movement, his boxing IQ, and his very educated and fast jab is going to all be very tough for Canelo to deal with. Now, we've seen Canelo Alvarez fight guys like Floyd Mayweather, Erislandy Lara, Austin Trout, Miguel Cotto, all guys with good legs, footwork, and good jabs, all, as well as defense, all gave Canelo Alvarez nightmares and gave him fits, and he really struggled with all of them, in my opinion. He lost to Erislandy Lara. I think the Trout fight, you can give it to him, but he struggled badly in that fight as well. I think Cotto had a very good argument to get the decision in that fight as well. But I think a lot of the fans are of the belief that Canelo Alvarez has improved tremendously since he fought Floyd Mayweather and Erislandy Lara, as well as the other guys I mentioned, because he's a lot older. He was very young back then, and they say he's learned from those fights, and he's a completely different fighter. Now, in my opinion, he's not a completely different fighter. He's still the same man with the same flaws. Now, I say that because when you saw him fight Golovkin in the first fight, I thought Golovkin won that fight. Golovkin used pressure in that fight to pressure and volume, in my opinion, to win the fight. It was called a draw. But then in the rematch, Golovkin came in with a different strategy where he used his footwork and movement as well as his, great jab to outbox Canelo. And in that fight, you saw Canelo was trying to apply pressure and he was trying to get body shots in, which he had success to the body, but he never managed to pin Golovkin down. He was, walking forwards, plodding forwards, trying to apply pressure on Golovkin, getting hit with jabs, and he couldn't back Golovkin onto the ropes. He couldn't pin him on the ropes. His feet were too slow to be able to cut the angles on Golovkin, and Golovkin was able to just box around, circling around in the middle of the ring using his jab. And like I say, Canelo couldn't put him on the ropes. Now I think Billy Joe Saunders, he's got a lot more speed than Golovkin, especially the Golovkin that fought Canelo, who's up in age. He's got a lot more speed than Golovkin has, Billy Joe Saunders, and he's a lot faster. Like I say, got a lot better, faster feet, as well as faster with his hand speed, and his reflexes and defense, in my opinion, is better than Golovkin's at this stage of his career. So, like I say, Billy Joe Saunders, he's very fast, both with his hands and his feet. I think both of those things are going to give Canelo trouble, and I don't think Canelo's going to be able to pin Billy Joe Saunders down like in the Lara fight. He couldn't really pin Lara down, but Lara was a bit too defensive. He wasn't throwing enough punches. Every time he let that left hand go, it would hit Canelo in the middle of his face. But Lara didn't punch enough. In my opinion, he still did enough to win the fight. But I think when you fight Golovkin, when you fight Canelo, you've really got to school him. You've got to blow him out. You've got to really make the punch stats one-sided, and I mean very one-sided, because even when Golovkin, completely outlanded him and stuff, he still didn't get the decisions. So I think Billy Joe Saunders has the skills and the ability to make every round so one-sided that the judges cannot give it to Canelo, because I think going into this fight, it's taking place in America. Billy Joe Saunders is going to start 3, 4, 5 rounds down. That's just how it is when you fight Canelo. Because, Floyd Mayweather practically won every round against Canelo, pitched a shutout and schooled him. One of the judges still had it a draw, gave Canelo 6 rounds. So, like I say, you're going in possibly 4 or 5 rounds down against Canelo. You got to put on a clinic. You can't give any rounds away. In my opinion, Billy Joe Saunders, like I say, he has the skill set to do it. But Billy Joe Saunders, he's an interesting character, because in my opinion, he fights up to the level of his opposition. You've seen it in fights when he fought David Lemieux, and he put on an absolute clinic and schooled David Lemieux over there in Canada, because there was a element of fear to it. He knew how dangerous Lemieux was. He knew that if he let Lemieux catch him with one shot, it could be over. So he came into that fight very focused, and game plan was absolutely on point, and he performed to the T, where, like I say, he schooled Lemieux and he completely outclassed Lemieux. So I think he could do a similar thing to Canelo. Now, I'm not saying Lemieux is on Canelo's level. He obviously has nowhere near as good a boxing IQ or defense or skills as Canelo, or even punch selection, but he has got power. But I think Billy Joe can do a similar thing to Canelo due to his slow feet, as he did to Lemieux. Now, you also saw, when Billy Joe fought Eubanks and he beat Chris Eubank. I think Chris Eubank is a pretty similar fighter to Canelo Alvarez in a sense that you can outbox him from range. And I think Billy Joe Saunders is better than Canelo from distance. But on the inside, both Eubank and Canelo Alvarez are very dangerous and very skillful with their uppercuts and hooks. And you saw Billy Joe Saunders early in that fight. He won the first 5 rounds and was looking very good, and then he almost hit a wall where he got very tired and he started struggling in that fight down the stretch, and he still managed to win a couple rounds down the back end to secure the victory. But he showed that he had a bit of stamina issues in that fight. But like I say, with this being such a big fight, I do believe he's going to come into this fight in prime condition. I think in the Eubanks fight, he thought he was so much of a better boxer, which he was, that he didn't really need to be in his prime condition. Now in this fight, he's fighting what a lot of people consider to be the number one pound for pound fighter in the world. So I don't think he'll leave any stones, unturned in the preparation to this fight. And to me, what I've seen from him, he looks in pretty good condition because, like I say, we all pretty much knew this was the fight that was going to be announced after he defeated Yildirim. So he's probably been training for the past month or two, knowing this fight was coming. So I think he's going to come in prime condition. But like I say, with the fight being in America and probably American judges or Mexican judges, it's not going to be easy. You will get a close fight on the scorecards, even if you take Canelo Alvarez to school. But there are a couple things to worry about with Billy Joe Saunders, as he hasn't been very active in the last 3-4 years, and the opponents he's been fighting haven't been of a world-class level. I mean, his last fight he fought old washed-up Martin Murray. Now, he schooled Martin Murray, but in the previous 2 fights to that, since moving up to super middleweight, he hasn't really been in there with the top-level guys. So it's going to be interesting to see if there's any ring rust, because when he fought the fella from Argentina, when he fought on the undercard of the YouTubers, there was a lot of ring rust in that fight, and the judges had him, I think, behind on the scorecards, and he had to win that fight late by knockout to keep his belts there. So but once again, like I say, he performs up to the level of his opposition, similar to Tyson Fury. And I believe he's going to do that in this fight as well, perform up to the level of his opposition. So in this fight, I think we're finally going to see how good Billy Joe Saunders really could be. I don't think we've seen the best Billy Joe Saunders yet. Maybe we did in the Lemieux fight, but I think he has another gear, another level to go to if his opponent forces him to, because in that fight it was kind of he was in cruise control on Lemieux, because Lemieux couldn't get to him. His feet were too slow, he was too predictable with his attack, and Billy Joe Saunders was able to just school him, and then he went into cruise control and just kept winning rounds. So in this fight, I'd actually like to see Billy Joe Saunders be a little bit more aggressive. Even if he is winning rounds, I think he should press a bit more to try and possibly even stop Canelo. I know that's not an easy thing to do, or even drop Canelo, but I think he needs to do it. He needs to try and do it, similar to almost what Tyson did to Deontay Wilder in the second fight, because you're really up against it on the scorecards when you fight Canelo Alvarez, with him being such a huge star. But in my opinion, like I say, Billy Joe Saunders has the skill set to do it. Now, I mentioned that Billy Joe Saunders' stamina could possibly be an issue, and it has been a bit of an issue in some of his past fights, like against Eubanks. You saw, like, down the stretch he struggled a bit, and sometimes he doesn't come into fights in the best shape. He's not the only fighter in this fight that has a bit of a stamina problem. In my opinion, Canelo Alvarez himself has a stamina problem, and he has to manage his rounds. I don't think he can fight for the full 3 minutes of every round. In a lot of fights, you'll see he'll be very low volume until like the last 20-30 seconds, and then he'll let off a combination of flashy, eye-catching, hard power shots and try and steal the round, and the judges will often give him those rounds and disregard all the good work the opponent's done with the jab throughout the other 2.5 minutes of the round. So I think Billy Joe Saunders has to be careful for Canelo Alvarez resting in there and trying to steal the rounds on the judges' scorecards in the last 20-30 seconds. So I think he needs to be very alert come the last minute of every round, and while Canelo is resting in the first minute or two of the round, I think he really needs to get his work off and really use the jab and his straight left hand, because in my opinion the straight left hand on Canelo Alvarez is there. You saw it from Erislan Dilari, you saw it from Austin Trout, and the jab will be there as well. I think there's a big foot speed gap in this fight. I think it's going to show. I think Billy Joe has the ability to almost make this fight look like a bit of a drive-by shooting with his lateral movement, and how he can get in and out on Canelo with that foot speed, and get that straight left hand off down the pipe on Canelo. So both fighters have had stamina issues in their past. The thing is, I think Billy Joe Saunders, the stamina issues have come from him not taking his opponent as seriously as he should. I think Canelo always takes his opponent very seriously and just struggles with stamina due to him being quite an explosive fighter. But like I say, Billy Joe Saunders is, in my opinion, the fighter that can get the job done and beat Canelo Alvarez, put a stop to this run that Canelo's been on for the last 6 years, due to his boxing IQ, his good jab, his beautiful lateral movement and footwork, and his self-belief. Self-belief is very important, because you saw Yildirim, he did not believe in himself. He did not believe he should have been in there, which he shouldn't have been. But Billy Joe Saunders knows he should be in there. He's a two-time world champion. He's never been beaten in the pros. He's Olympian, amateur Olympian. The man has tremendous self-belief in himself, similar to Tyson Fury, and he knows he's going over there to win. He's not going over there for the paycheck, although he keeps joking that he's only going over there for the money and he's going to go over and lie down in a couple of rounds. We know that's not the case. He's shown this in his previous fights, and he's going there to win. In my opinion, Billy Joe Saunders should be the favorite in this fight. I know he won't be the favorite in this fight due to the public, and the bookies most certainly will have Canelo as a big favorite, but I probably will be laying a bit of money on Billy Joe Saunders in this fight. But thanks for listening, guys. Let me know your opinion on this previous fight that Canelo just had against Yildirim, as well as the upcoming fight against Billy Joe Saunders. Who do you think is going to win this fight? Let me know in the comment section below, guys. Thanks for listening. Talk to you guys again soon. Cheers.